Welcome. This is To Our Core with Katie Murray, and this is a place where we peel back our layers to uncover who we really are at our centre, at our core. And think of it as a chat with your bestie, the one who can make you laugh until your belly hurts, who is ridiculously unfiltered, and will lovingly call you forward to help you cut through the noise and get real with yourself. Around here, nothing is off limits, and we are mixing this up with equal parts humour and heart, so let's dive right in. Hello, and welcome back. It's so great to have you here today. I have a topic that has actually been brewing in the back of my mind for some months, and today it's the day that I finally prioritise having a chat with you about this, and that is the labels that we give ourselves. And no, I am not talking about those cool labels that the super organised people have on every single one of their Tupperware containers in their immaculate pantries, and I admire those pantries so much. However, my family revolts against that level of organisation, and I have tried rearranging my pantry. And then within a week, the family has been in there, throwing things in there willy-nilly, and I am back to square one. So if anyone has any ideas on how to keep your pantry looking like a place of calm instead of chaos, please send me a DM on Insta, because outside of banning them from entering the pantry, which is near impossible, given that I have hungry teens, I am at a loss. I'm at a complete loss. So no, I am not talking about those kind of labels, nor am I talking about those ones where you iron on the labels for clothes. Don't even get me started on that. There have been some actual disasters in regards to that, I can tell you. I'm talking about the labels that we choose, or even ones that we inherit, or the ones that sneak into our identity without even realizing they've absolutely unpacked and made themselves comfortable in our lives. And fair warning, this episode, it's not going to be the usual structure. This is just going to be a really real, raw and honest chat with you today to talk through something that I think a lot of us experience, which is living with labels that govern our lives. So if you're listening while driving or walking or folding laundry, then this is absolutely the kind of episode for you, because there will be no notes. There's not going to be any structured, tangible steps at the end. However, I think the conversation is going to be super beneficial to you regardless, because I've always been fascinated by how quickly we lean in to describe ourselves. Like if someone says to you or asks you, tell me about you, we often default to these labels such as I'm a mum, or I'm a business owner, or I am an absolute oversharer, or I'm the creative one, or I'm a wife, I'm an employee at ... insert whatever organisation or business that you work for, or I'm the organised one, or I'm the sensitive one. And what's wild is how rarely we actually question whether those labels still fit, or if they truly actually tell us anything at all about ourselves and who we are. Because I know that for me, I've worn a lot of those kind of labels over the years, and some I've done proudly. Some have absolutely been worn unconsciously, and some because, to be honest, standing behind a label or a descriptor of me felt safer than actually telling the full truth. And one woman I know, who I'm going to intentionally remain vague out of respect for her story and it not being mine to necessarily tell, really cracked something open for me around this whole topic. And when I describe this woman, for those that don't watch these episodes on YouTube, I have got a big smile on my face whenever I think of her, because she's just one of those people who just feels so incredibly good to be around. She is warm and she is kind and she's the connector. She's the one that brings everyone together, and she's the one who notices if someone's gone quiet or who remembers what you told them weeks ago. She's the person who brings people together without necessarily making it about herself or a big deal. It's always in service of others, and she absolutely never wants to be the center of attention. She just wants to bring that light and that recognition and that community to other people. And also, what many people wouldn't know is that there's a whole story behind that woman and who she is today. And like I said, that's her story and it's not mine to share. However, what is mine is to share how her perspective on identity, and no, she didn't use those exact words, but her story definitely illuminated identity in a way that I had previously never considered. Because those who know anything about her story, who have been privileged to hear her speak about her life experiences, might refer to her as the Aussie battler. In fact, she has shared with me that when people do hear her story, they're like, wow, you're like the underdog. You are the Aussie battler. And you know what she also shared with me? She hates that. Not like in a super dramatic way, like chuck a hissy fit and tell people to shut up and stop saying that. In a really grounded, centered, very clear way. Because she once said to me, and I am absolutely paraphrasing, she said, I don't want my life to simply be about what I've survived. I want it to be about what I've built. And honestly, that has stayed with me for over a year since we had that conversation. Because when she said that, I immediately thought about my own labels. And some of them, I think, particularly in Aussie culture, the battler, the Aussie battler, it can be intended with a compliment. And so not all the labels that we've never necessarily adopted for ourselves are what would be framed as negative. However, when we think about the labels and my own labels, and I realized how many I've actually clung to, even when they perhaps aren't serving me. And like, for example, one of those was that I was the capable one. You know, the label, the one who handles all the things, who figures it out, who's good under pressure, who doesn't need help. And I absolutely wore that one like armor. And it looked good from the outside. It looked independent. It looked self-sufficient. It looked resilient. Yet on the inside, it also meant that a lot of times I didn't allow myself to fall apart when perhaps that would have been the most beneficial thing. In fact, I was probably carrying a facade on a lot of occasions. And it also really allowed me to step into avoidance of what I perhaps truly needed to feel in those moments. It created situations where I didn't ask for support and I didn't slow down because, you know, capable people, they don't slow down, right? Yeah. And at some point, that label stopped being empowering and it started being incredibly exhausting. And I didn't question it because it had become who I was, who I identified as. It was who I had told myself that people expected me to be now. So who was I to change the storyline on them? I also have labeled myself in the past as I'm just a bit of a perfectionist, which sounds harmless, right? It can almost be impressive. Like I'm organized with really high standards, and we can really hang our hat often on that being part of our work ethic. Yet what it actually really meant for me was that I will absolutely overthink things to death. I will tweak and I will edit and I will refine and I will reread and I will rewrite. And then maybe I might put it out into the world for someone else's opinion. And also, if that doesn't land perfectly, well, obviously that means I shouldn't have tried in the first place. Has anyone else ever deleted a post on Instagram when the vanity metric of likes suggests that there was absolutely no value in what you shared? Well, that was me 5 years ago. I would post, I would wait, I would check for validation that it was good enough. And if it didn't get a response that I'd hoped, Control Alt Delete. Because my perfectionism was redefined as being thorough, diligent, detail orientated. Or my personal favorite was I just like things done properly. However, meanwhile, perfectionism is sitting in the corner saying, hey, quick question. What if we never let anyone see this version of you at all? Like the true version of you at all? And the funny thing is that I didn't realize that it was a label that I was even living inside. I thought it was just my personality, just how I was wired, until I noticed that it was often keeping me small. It was often allowing more delays in my life than it needed to. It created many, many moments where I second guessed myself, and all because I was waiting to feel ready or worthy or like I had the right to have an original thought or opinion. So that can feel a bit dangerous sometimes when you put yourself out on a limb, can it, with your own authentic thoughts and opinion, because you see labels, they don't just apply to the ones that we know and identify with so readily, like for me, perfectionism or procrastination or people pleasing. We do this with so many things. We say, I'm just bad with money, or I'm the emotional one, or I'm the messy one, I'm the clumsy one, I'm the disorganized one, I'm the hustle queen, or I'm the wing it girl. I hung my hat on that a lot. I'm the wing it girl. I just roll with it. And you know what it allowed me to do in having that kind of label to stand behind was that if it all went wrong, I'll just say, oh, I never anticipated it could have gone that way because I hadn't planned, I hadn't prepped, I hadn't put my heart in that. I just was winging it. So I don't have to hold myself to that. So, you can see how you can fluctuate between labels of wanting like the highest standard for yourself in terms of perfectionism and then giving yourself an out by saying, I'm just a wing it girl. I just roll with it. So sometimes we may even say these labels in a joking way. However, when we repeat them over and over and over again, they soon become our beliefs. And what do we know about our beliefs is that they soon become our identity. And motherhood, yes, it added a whole new layer of labels for me. Suddenly there was the good mum, the present mum, the working mum, the calm mum. And I noticed how quickly that I measured myself against them. If I was tired, shit, I'm not being present enough with them. Or if I worked and had to miss that school sporting event or that play, or the guilts, the mother guilts. If I rested, I framed it as lazy, like I should be doing something with my time, because who am I to just sit and rest? And I realized in all of this that I was just trying to live up to labels that were never designed for real, raw, authentic humans. Letting go of some of those labels, I'm going to be honest, have felt like really uncomfortable at times, and also bloody freeing. It was like I literally realized that I could throw out the rule book that I had created for my life with my own damn pen. So when I introduced this episode and started talking about this incredible woman that I know, what I admire about her is how quietly she chose something different for herself. Despite the accolades or positive affirmations that was intended through those, you're an Aussie battler, you've just got grit and determination. She chose not to be defined by her story of struggle. She honors her past, yeah. However, she doesn't create a life that performs within its limitations. She doesn't want to be admired for her endurance. This woman wants to be known for joy and love and connection and compassion. She is a person that truly loves her people. And when I look at her, that's what I see. Not struggle. In fact, if she hadn't have shared her story with me, I would have had no idea that that was her life experience, because that's how she's chosen to define herself, by the joy and the connection and the love and the compassion and the care that she shows for other people, not survival. No idea that that was her story until she told me it. while we were driving in a car one day. She just started talking about her past experiences, and I was like, wow, does this show how layered we are as human beings? And the way she told it, it was so matter of fact. It was her truth. However, she didn't hold any anger or sadness or shame, or it certainly wasn't expressed in her storytelling and recollection of those events. She just acknowledged that it was part of her story that taught her lessons and led her to choose how she wants to live into the future. And how she lives is one centered on warmth and genuine care and laughter and belonging and gratitude. And I think sometimes that we forget that identity isn't fixed. It wasn't fixed for her. She could have absolutely held her story to her chest as armor or as a badge of honor, because her story is worth respect for how she's navigated it. However, she chose differently for herself. She chose not to be identified by those experiences, which could have absolutely created labels for her. You can say, when you're looking at identity not being fixed, I used to be a people pleaser, or I used to be the strong one that never asked for support, or I used to be the one who never stopped. And then quietly choose something else for yourself. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to get up on a stage and declare it. You don't have to justify it. You just start living differently. You get to choose whether your story is defined by what you have come through and survived, which hard truth is that that actually keeps you wedded to the story of struggle. Or you know what you can say also? Fuck it. Yeah, I've been through some shit. And I'm going to take the lessons from it and, truly know what I'm capable of getting through because of those lessons. And now I'm facing forward. I'm looking to a future and saying, it gets better from here. I choose differently for myself now. I show up differently for myself now. I'm capable of so much more now that I have that experience. I have that knowledge. I have more resources than I perhaps had back then. I'm capable of so much more because of all of that. And I get to dream bigger for myself than others may have even dreamt for me. Because when you think about the Aussie battler, you're looking at what they've overcome, not what they can achieve. And so other people may have defined what is possible for you in that experience of them hearing your story. They may have created limitations for you based on what they know you've been through, because you're an Aussie battler and you keep on getting up and continuing on. And also, there's a ceiling to that. And I just want you to know that if you need to hear a permission piece today, it's that you get to dream bigger for yourself than others may dream for you. You get to say, this is my life, and I get to emphasize the parts of my story that fuel me to move forward, rather than looking back at what has been, which is anchoring you to your past. And eventually, when you take that stand, when you make that decision for yourself, the label or labels change. Because we change it by the standard that we live by, and people will follow. And if they don't, that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to live within the story that other people have created for us about what's possible. Just like this beautiful, incredible woman that is nothing but warmth and compassion and connection with others hasn't defined herself by some of the incredibly challenging experiences that she has experienced in her life. So maybe today, just notice the words that you use about yourself. The throwaway ones, the jokes, the that's just how I am stories. and instead ask yourself, is this still true for me? Is this what I actually want to be? Or is this just familiar? Because you are allowed to be more than your hardest chapter. You're allowed to be more than your hardest chapter. You are allowed to be known for joy, and you are allowed to evolve, even if it confuses people who knew the old version of you. Take them on the journey with you. And hey, if they don't come with you, that's okay too. Like I said, you're creating space for the people who truly want to see you live fully as you want to live, not how you think you should live. So there are my thoughts today. I'm dedicating this episode to that beautiful woman who, without even knowing it, has taught me so much about identity and labels and the compliments, like the Aussie battler, that sometimes keep us constrained. And I hope it has given you something to ponder and reflect on, and perhaps even see yourself in the possibility of changing the labels that you no longer need to define who you are. So until next week, take care of you all the way to your core. Thanks for spending time with me today on To Our Core. If something landed in your heart or gave you a much needed giggle, consider sharing it with a friend who also may need this as a timely reminder. And go on, you know you want to. Give me a 5-star review so that this podcast can land in the ears of many, many more people. Because remember that life is too short to stay on the surface. Keep living, loving, and laughing all the way to your core. Go make life great. And if you want support around this, go to the show notes to find out more. Until next time, I'll meet you back here with more truth, laughter, and a whole lot of heart.